The sun was a yellow razor, slicing through the penthouse windows. It cut right through my hangover, through the cheap champagne and the expensive pills, and landed right on my eyes. I didn't want to open them. I wanted to stay in the dark, where the dreams were still sweet and the men were still breathing. But the smell got to me. Chanel No. 5 and something else. Something coppery and final. I sat up. The silk sheet pooled around my waist, a cold, white wave. Beside me, Senator Whitmore was asleep, permanently. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling like he'd seen God and wasn't impressed. His mouth was a little slack, the way it always was after he'd had too much to drink and too much of me. But this was different. This was the big sleep, the one you don't wake up from. And there on his chest, right over his silk pajamas, was a small, dark hole. A neat, tidy little button of death. It wasn't messy. It was professional. My lipstick was on his collar, a perfect crimson kiss. Fatal Red, the shade was called. I should have known. My head throbbed, not just from the booze, from the memory or the lack of it. I remembered his hands, his promises, the weight of his money on the nightstand. I remembered him laughing, calling me his insurance policy. After that, a fog, a thick gray blanket of pills and bubbly. Then I saw the gun, on the nightstand, next to my empty glass, a small silver revolver. My fingerprints were all over it. I could feel them, a ghostly tingle on my skin. I'd picked it up. I'd admired it. He'd said it was for his protection. Guess he was wrong. The city below glittered, a diamond necklace on a dirty whore. From up here, you couldn't see the grime. You couldn't smell the desperation. You just saw the sun, the sky, the endless promise of California. The promise Whitmore had sold me, a new life, a clean break. All I had to do was... What? I swung my legs out of bed. My dress, a sliver of black lace, was on the floor. I stepped into it, my movements slow, careful. This was a crime scene, and I was the star exhibit. My purse was on the table. I didn't look at the money. I just took my lipstick. A girl needs her priorities. The phone on the nightstand began to ring, a shrill, insistent scream. I knew who it was, the front desk. Or maybe the cops. Maybe they were already on their way up, their shoes squeaking on the marble floors, their hands ready to slap the cuffs on me. I didn't wait. I walked to the door, my head held high. I was Evelyn Drake. I'd been in tighter spots than this. I'd just never woken up in one with a corpse. I opened the door, and there he was, Detective Sloan. His face was like a slab of granite, his eyes like two chips of ice. He looked at me, then at the bed behind me. He didn't look surprised. He looked like he'd just won the lottery. Evelyn Drake, he said, his voice flat and dead. You're under arrest for the murder of Senator Jonathan Whitmore. He didn't read me my rights. He didn't have to. The city was my judge, jury, and executioner, and the verdict was already in. The tabloids would love this. The corpse queen, they'd call me. And they'd be right. I'd kissed a corpse goodbye. Now I just had to figure out how to kiss my own life goodbye, too. The hallway was a circus, and I was the main attraction. Flashbulbs popped like cheap champagne corks, blinding me. Reporters shouted questions, their voices a pack of hungry dogs. Evelyn, did you do it? Was he blackmailing you? How does it feel to be the corpse queen? Detective Sloane's hand was a manacle on my arm, his face a mask of grim satisfaction. He was enjoying this. The headlines were already writing themselves in his head. That's when I played my only card. I let out a scream, a high, theatrical shriek that would make a Hollywood starlet proud. I staggered, my eyes rolling back in my head, and collapsed into the arms of the nearest photographer. It was Jack Rayner. He smelled like stale whiskey and developer fluid. For a second, his arms felt familiar. Then I remembered he'd sell his own mother for a picture of her crying. The chaos was perfect. While the reporters swarmed Sloan, demanding he let me get medical attention, Jack pulled me back into the service elevator. The doors slid shut, cutting off the noise. We were alone in the metal box, the air thick with unspoken history. You always did know how to make an exit, Evie, he said, a grin playing on his lips. His eyes, though, were calculating. He was already framing the shot. Shut up, Jack, I said, my voice shaking. They're framing me. Honey, he chuckled, in this town, everyone's a frame. The question is, who's holding the picture? He let go of my arm. I got you out for now. Sloane's not a cop. He's a publicity hound. He'll enjoy the chase more than the capture. But you owe me. I don't owe you anything. You owe me the exclusive story of the decade, he said, his voice hardening, and you'll pay, one way or another. The elevator opened into the parking garage. He handed me a set of keys. A '52 Ford, third level. Don't scratch it, it's not mine. He paused, his gaze lingering on my lips. Be careful, Evie. The people who wanted Whitmore dead, they're not like the politicians. They don't leave witnesses. He was right. I disappeared into the city, a ghost in a stolen car. I drove until the glass towers of Sunset were just a smear of light in the rearview mirror. I ended up at a place called the Starlight Motel, where the neon sign flickered like a dying heart and the room smelled of regret and disinfectant. I looked at myself in the cracked mirror over the sink. The corpse queen. My hair was a mess, my mascara smudged. But my eyes were clear. I wasn't running from the law. I was running towards a truth, and I knew just the weasel to help me dig it up. I found a payphone in a greasy spoon diner, the smell of coffee and fried onions thick in the air. I dropped a dime and dialed the number I knew by heart. The Chronicle, a bored voice answered. Rayner, it's Evelyn. A pause, then his voice, slick and predatory. The corpse queen herself. I was wondering when you'd call. Your face is selling a lot of papers. Cut the crap, Jack. I need information. Whitmore had enemies. I need names. Names cost money, honey, or something better. I'm broke, but I can give you something no one else has. The real story, not the one Sloan is selling. He laughed, a low, gravelly sound. You're the story, Evie, and right now you're a hot one. Fine, meet me, the Gilded Cage, an hour, and come alone. The Gilded Cage was a dive bar downtown, the kind of place where dreams went to drown. The air was a cocktail of stale smoke, cheap perfume, and desperation. Jack was at a corner booth, a camera on the table next to his whiskey. He looked like a vulture who just spotted a carcass. I slid into the booth. Who wanted him dead, Jack? Everyone, he said, swirling his drink. Whitmore was a collector of secrets. He had files on half the city's power players, businessmen, judges, cops, you name it. He was blackmailing the whole damn state. So someone shut him up. Someone cleaned his clock, professionally. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. There's a name, a fixer. They call him Silas. He handles the dirty work for the people who can't afford to get their hands dirty. If Whitmore was killed, Silas either pulled the trigger or knows who did. Where can I find him? Jack grinned. That's the other half of the price. He runs a cleaning service, not for windows for problems, out of a laundrette on 5th. Be careful, Evie. Silas doesn't talk to people like you. He erases them. I left him there, his eyes following me out the door. I had a name, a lead. I drove to the laundrette, a steamy, fluorescent-lit hell that reeked of bleach and soap. A man in a stained undershirt was loading a machine. He looked like a rat who'd lost a fight with a broom. I'm looking for Silas, I said. The man's eyes darted around the room. No one here by that name. I put a $50 bill on the folding table. Try again. He snatched the bill. Back room, but he doesn't like visitors. I pushed through the swinging door into the back. It was a small office filled with filing cabinets and a body. A man was slumped over a desk, a fountain pen sticking out of his neck like a strange flower. Blood pooled on a stack of papers. His eyes were wide, staring at the door. At me. On the desk, next to his hand, was a single photograph. It was me, leaving Whitmore's hotel. The timestamp was from this morning. Jack had sold me out. He'd given me up, then sent me here to be the next victim. I heard a floorboard creak behind me. I spun around. The man from the front room was there, holding a pistol. His hand was shaking. She wasn't supposed to see that, he muttered, more to himself than to me. Silas said no witnesses. He raised the gun. I closed my eyes. This was it, the end of the line. But the shot didn't come. I heard a thud, a wet gurgle. I opened my eyes. The man was on the floor, a knife in his back. Standing over him was a figure in a dark coat, his face hidden in the shadows. Miss Drake, a voice said, smooth as silk. We have to stop meeting like this. You're making my job very difficult. He stepped out of the shadows. It was Detective Sloan. He wasn't here to arrest me. He was here to clean up the mess, and I was part of the mess. Whitmore's files, he said, his eyes cold. Where are they? I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing for sure. Jack Rayner was a dead man walking, and I was right behind him. Sloan's smile was a razor blade dipped in poison. He didn't look like a cop anymore. He looked like a man who owned the morgue. Files, I said, my voice a breathy whisper I didn't have to fake. Detective, I don't know what you're talking about. I just woke up next to a dead man. It's been a very confusing morning. He stepped closer, the smell of stale cigar and cheap cologne the tiny office. He nudged the dead man on the floor with his shoe. This is Silas's man, a professional. He was sent to clean up a loose end. You. Sloane's eyes flickered over my body, not with desire, but with appraisal, like I was a piece of meat he was about to carve up. Whitmore was a pig, but he was a useful pig. He kept records, little black books, audio tapes, photographs, the kind of things that make men in high places do very low things. Where are they? I don't have them. I know, he said, his voice softening, which was scarier than when he was shouting. But he gave them to you, or told you where to find them. You were his insurance policy, remember? He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His touch was cold, reptilian. Here's the deal, Evelyn. You're going to find those files for me. You have 24 hours. If you don't, I'll find you. And I'll make sure the next headline reads, Corpse Queen Commits Suicide in Grief. Are we clear? He was letting me go. It was a trap, of course. A cat letting the mouse think it has a chance, just for the sport of it. But it was the only chance I had. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Good girl, he said. He turned and walked out, leaving me alone with the dead and the smell of bleach. I didn't wait. I ran out the back, into a maze of trash-strewn alleys, and didn't stop until the neon of Hollywood Boulevard burned my eyes. Jack Rayner, he was the thread, the one who tied me to Whitmore, the one who sold me to Silas. He was a weasel, but weasels get scared, and scared weasels talk. I found him in a flophouse off Vine, in a room that smelled like sour gin and failure. The door was unlocked. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, a bottle in his hand, staring at the wall like it owed him money. They're gonna kill me, Evie, he said, not even looking at me. Silas's people. They said I was a loose end. You sold me out, you son of a bitch, I said, my voice flat. I didn't have the energy for screaming. He turned, his eyes wide and bloodshot. I had to. They offered me money, a real job, not just snapping pictures of crying starlets. They said you were just part of the game. No hard feelings. He tried for a grin, but it collapsed on his face. Who's they? Who's behind this? It's a circle, he slurred, taking a long drink from the bottle. A blackmail ring. Whitmore wasn't the leader. He was just the treasurer. The Fed, he held the files. They were all in it. Judges, studio heads, they'd get the dirt on someone, and Whitmore would keep the proof. But he got greedy, and it paralyzed. Jack leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He was scared of one of them, though. Said this guy was the real devil, the one who taught him everything. Said he was a man who could make you feel like a queen right before he cut your throat. A chill crawled up my spine. Did he give you a name? Jack shook his head. No, just a warning. He said the man was a charmer, a real smooth operator. Said he'd know his way around a woman's bedroom. Said that kissed him before. Jack's eyes glazed over, trying to remember. It was weird the way he said it. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Jack's face went white. They're here, he whispered, his whole body starting to shake. He scrambled up, knocking the bottle over. I have to get out of here. He made a break for the door, but it swung open before he reached it. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the dim hallway light. I couldn't see a face, just the glint of steel. There was no gunshot, just a soft, wet sound and a choked gasp. Jack stumbled back, his hands flying to his throat. Blood seeped through his fingers. He fell to his knees, his eyes wide with a final, stupid surprise. He collapsed on the floor, a dark puddle spreading around him. The figure in the doorway didn't move. Then, I heard it, the whir click of a camera shutter. A flashbulb popped, blinding me for a second, freezing the image of Jack Rayner bleeding out on the dirty floor. The camera was still rolling. The figure turned and walked away, leaving the door open. I stayed hidden in the shadows until footsteps faded down the hall. Then I crept out. Jack was dead. His camera lay on the floor beside him, the flash bulb smoking. Next to it was a small metal canister of 8mm film. It must have fallen from his pocket. I picked it up. It was cold and heavy in my hand. A label was taped to it. In Whitmore's neat, precise handwriting were 2 words, insurance policy. I didn't know what was on that film, proof of my innocence, or the perfect blackmail material to get me killed. Either way, it was the only card I had left to play. The flashbulb burned Jack's death onto my eyelids, a ghost image of his surprise. I didn't feel a thing. No sorrow, no anger, just a cold, hard fact. Jack Rayner was dead, and I was still alive. For now. I stepped over his body, not bothering to wipe my feet. The canister of film felt like a live grenade in my pocket. I didn't look back. Sorry, Jack. You sold the picture, now you're in it. Final frame. The city was a beast, and I was running through its guts. I needed a dark place to think, a darker place to see. I found it on a street that smelled of piss and popcorn, the Lyric, a grindhouse theater that showed foreign films for men who couldn't get a date. The kind of place where no one asks questions. The projectionist was a greasy little man named Lou, with nicotine-stained fingers and eyes that had seen too much of life through a lens. I laid a $100 bill on his cluttered workbench, next to a stack of stag reels. I need to see this, I said, placing the canister next to the money. Alone. Lou looked at the money, then at me. He saw the fear under my makeup, the desperation in my eyes. He didn't ask. He just nodded. Booth 3, 5 minutes. The booth was a coffin of wood and dust, the air thick with the smell of hot metal and old dreams. I threaded the film onto the reel, my hands shaking so bad I could barely get it through the gate. I flicked a switch. The beam of light cut through the darkness, hitting the small screen in front of me. The film flickered, jittered, then stabilized. It was Whitmore's penthouse. The camera was hidden, high up in a bookshelf. I saw myself, laughing, pouring champagne. I looked beautiful. I looked happy. I looked like a fool. Whitmore was there, his hand on my thigh, his smile a shark's grin. He was saying something, his voice a low murmur I couldn't quite catch. Then he handed me a glass. I remember that glass. It tasted like almonds and betrayal. On screen, I swayed. My eyes went hazy. I slumped onto the bed, a doll with its strings cut. Whitmore laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. He thought I was out. Then, another figure entered the frame. He moved from the shadows of the bedroom, silent as a cat. He was dressed in a dark suit, his face turned away from the hidden camera. But I knew that build, that confident, predatory way of moving. I'd felt it before. He leaned over the bed, over me. He whispered something to Whitmore. Whitmore's face went pale. He started to say something, a protest, a plea. The man picked up the silver revolver from the nightstand, the one with my fingerprints all over it. He pointed it at Whitmore's chest. The film went white, a cut, then it came back. The man was gone. Whitmore was dead, and I was still asleep on the bed, a perfect patsy. The film ran out, flapping against the reel with a rhythmic, hollow slap. I sat there in the dark, the truth washing over me, cold and filthy. Jack didn't just sell me out after the murder. He was there before. He was the one who set up the hidden camera. This was his insurance policy, too. He filmed the whole damn thing. He framed me, then tried to sell the film to the killer. That's why he was dead. He double-crossed the wrong man. But who was the man in the suit? The image was burned in my brain. The way he stood, the way he moved. It was familiar. A ghost from a dance I'd tried to forget. I had the film. I had the leverage. It wasn't proof of my innocence, not exactly, but it was proof that someone else was in the room. And in this town, that was all that mattered. I walked out of the booth, leaving the film on the reel. Lou wouldn't touch it. He valued his life more than $100. I found a payphone on the corner, the receiver sticky against my ear. I dropped a dime and dialed the number for the LAPD, asking for Detective Sloan. He picked up on the second ring. Sloan. Detective, I said, my voice smooth as silk. It's the Corpse Queen. I hear you're looking for me. There was a pause on the other end. I could almost hear him smiling. Miss Drake, you're a hard woman to find, and a hard woman to keep alive. I have something you want, I said, ignoring his threat. Something that blows this whole case wide open. The real killer, on film. I let that hang in the air. I could hear his breathing change. Where? He asked, his voice tight. The ballroom at the Ambassador Hotel. Midnight. Come alone and bring my freedom. What makes you think I'll deal? Because, I said, looking at the neon signs reflected in a puddle at my feet. The man on that film, he has a face you'll recognize. And I have a feeling you'd do anything to keep it from the public. I hung up before he could answer. The game had changed. I wasn't a rabbit running from the foxes anymore. I was holding the gun. I just had to remember if I knew how to pull the trigger. The Ambassador Hotel's ballroom was a tomb for forgotten parties, a cavern of gilded ceilings and crystal chandeliers, all collecting dust in the dark. My footsteps echoed, the only sound in a room built for 1,000 laughs. I felt like the last guest at the end of the world. I'd chosen the place, a stage for my final act. I wasn't just selling a film, I was selling a new reality, one where I wasn't the killer, one where I walked out into the California sun and never looked back. I had the projector set up on a table, the beam of light ready to slice through the lies. The canister of film was in my purse, cool and heavy, my get-out-of-jail-free card. The doors swung open at exactly midnight. Sloan walked in, his face like carved stone. But he wasn't alone. Behind him was another man, older, with silver hair and a suit that cost more than my life. He moved with an easy grace, a man who owned the room before he even stepped inside. This wasn't a cop. This was the fixer, the man Sloan answered to. "Miss Drake," the older man said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "A pleasure. I'm Mr. Sterling. I handle the city's delicate matters." "Delicate," I laughed, and the sound was brittle. "Is that what you call murder and blackmail?" "Business," he corrected me gently. "Now you have something for us?" I nodded, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I walked to the projector. "This is the film from Whitmore's room. It shows who really killed him." I looked right at Sloan. "It shows you, detective." Sloan didn't even flinch. Sterling just smiled. "Humor us." I threaded the film. My hands were steady now. This was it, the moment of truth. I flicked the switch. The beam hit the massive screen at the end of a ghostly rectangle in the gloom. The image flickered to life. The penthouse. Me, laughing. Whitmore, his hand on my leg. The champagne, the pills. I watched myself drink, a beautiful fool on the edge of a cliff. Then, the man in the suit entered the frame. He moved from the bedroom shadows. I held my breath. He turned his head just enough, the hidden camera catching his profile. It was Sloan. On the giant screen, Sloan leaned over the bed, over my drugged form. He whispered to Whitmore. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Whitmore's face. It wasn't just fear. It was terror. The man who held the city's secrets in his palm was now just a scared little pig. Sloan picked up the gun, my gun, the one with my prints. He pointed it at Whitmore's heart. I looked over at the real Sloan, standing in the darkness. He was watching the screen with a detached curiosity, like he was reviewing a take on a movie set. "See?" I said, my voice triumphant. "He's the killer. Keep watching, Miss Drake," Sterling said softly. I turned back to the screen, and that's when the world broke. On the film, just as Sloan's finger tightened on the trigger, my eyes snapped open. The drug hadn't taken me completely. I was awake. I saw the gun. I saw Sloan, and I saw Whitmore's sneer, the look of a man who owned me, body and soul. My hand shot out, covering Sloan's on the grip. The camera angle was bad, a frantic, shaky mess. You couldn't see who was pulling, who was pushing. You just saw the struggle. A flash of anger, white-hot and pure, cutting through the chemical haze in my brain. His words came back to me, a venomous whisper from a memory I'd buried. "You're nothing, Evelyn. A piece of property, and I can break you." The gun went off. On the screen, Whitmore jerked. A neat, tidy little button of death appeared on his chest. Sloan let go of the gun, stumbling back. He looked at me, his eyes wide with shock. I looked at the gun in my hand, then at Whitmore's dead face. Then the drug, the shock, the sheer impossibility of it all, hit me like a tidal wave. I collapsed back onto the bed, the world going black. The film ran out, flapping against the reel. The screen went white. The ballroom was silent. The truth was a naked thing, shivering in the dark. I did it. I killed him. I just forgot. A laugh cut through the silence. It was Sterling. "Well, well," he said, clapping his hands together softly. "The star of the show, after all. Detective Sloan was just there to persuade the senator to sign over his insurance policies. You were the loose end he didn't count on." He looked at Sloan. "You should have controlled your asset better, detective." Sloan's face was a mask of fury. She was supposed to be out cold. "Guess the city always gets its due," Sterling said, his voice full of final irony. He pulled a small, sleek camera from his coat pocket. "The Corpse Queen's final confession. It'll sell 1,000,000 copies." He raised the camera. The last thing I saw was the blinding white flash of the bulb, burning my image onto the film one last time. The last thing I felt was the cold, hard kiss of a bullet. And in the darkness, I finally understood. In this town, you don't kiss the corpse goodbye.